A single mother stepped into Judge Judy's courtroom wearing a faded thrift store dress and clutching a folder stuffed with handwritten receipts. Less than 2 minutes later, Faye, the wealthy family seated across from her, would say something so cold, so unbelievably arrogant, that even the bailiff's face tightened in disgust. What followed wasn't just another courtroom ruling, for it became a brutal lesson in dignity, accountability, and the truth that money can never buy decency. Before we get into the moment, Judge Judy completely dismantled this family's cruelty and defended a mother struggling just to survive. Faye, make sure you subscribe right now because we're getting closer to our subscriber milestone every day. And this story about respect, justice, and standing up for hardworking people, is exactly why Judge Judy has remained one of television's most powerful voices for so many years. If you believe no amount of wealth gives someone the right to humiliate another human being, leave a comment below. Because by the end of this story, you'll understand why this courtroom exchange became unforgettable and why the Brown family will never forget the day they underestimated the wrong woman. Here's something worth thinking about. At what point did people start believing financial success gave them permission to look down on others? Because what unfolded in this courtroom showed that expensive clothes and luxury lifestyles can never replace character, compassion, or integrity. Tuesday afternoon, 2:45 p.m., Los Angeles Superior Court. Just before proceedings begin, the bailiff quietly leans toward Judge Judy. Your Honor, this one may get tense. Faye, the defendants have been rude to staff all afternoon. Very condescending. The plaintiff's a single mother. She's extremely nervous. Judge Judy gives a slow nod. Her instincts already tell her this hearing is going to require patience, sharp attention, and possibly some hard truths. The case file reads, Joseph versus Brown family. Small claims dispute. Total claim, $4. Faye, $8.50 for unpaid domestic labor. The defendants are Charles Brown, hedge fund executive, Victoria Brown, luxury real estate investor, and their daughter, Madison Brown, self-described lifestyle influencer. Judge Judy flips through the paperwork again, pausing at the carefully organized handwritten records attached to the complaint. Sophia Joseph walks into the courtroom first. She's 34 years old, raising 2 children alone after losing her husband several years earlier. She wears a modest navy blue dress she bought secondhand years ago. The fabric is worn near the sleeves, but it's spotless and neatly pressed. In her hands is a thick folder packed with receipts, schedules, notes, and printed messages. Her fingers shake slightly, dark exhaustion circles her eyes. For 5 years, she's worked non-stop, juggling 3 jobs just to keep food on the table and rent paid. Still, despite her nerves, she carries herself with quiet dignity as she approaches the plaintiff's table. This case matters desperately to her. That $4.50 isn't just a number. It equals 4 months of rent. It means braces her daughter needs, shoes for her son who has outgrown the only pair he owns. It means maybe for once, she could stop working until midnight every day and actually spend time with her children before they fall asleep. Then the courtroom doors open again. The Brown family enters as though they own the building. Charles Brown, 52, wears a tailored Armani suit worth thousands. A Rolex glints on his wrist beneath the courtroom lighting. Even his shoes probably cost more than Sophia spends feeding her family in a month. Victoria Brown walks beside him in designer couture, diamonds flashing with every movement. A luxury handbag hangs casually from her arm like it's insignificant. Their daughter Madison trails behind them, wearing expensive athleisure clothing, AirPods in place, never once lifting her eyes from her phone. Victoria lets out an irritated sigh as they sit down. Loudly enough for half the courtroom to hear, Madison continues scrolling through social media, occasionally smirking at her screen as though the entire hearing is an inconvenience interrupting her day. Charles adjusts his watch and surveys the room with the confidence of a man convinced consequences apply only to ordinary people. Judge Judy finally looks up. Mrs. Joseph, she says firmly, you're claiming the Brown family owes you $4,850 for domestic services. Explain your claim. Sophia clears her throat, trying to steady herself. Yes, Your Honor. I cleaned their home twice every week for 6 months. They agreed to pay me $185 each visit. They paid the first 3 months, but after that they stopped. I worked 26 more cleaning days without receiving payment. That comes to $4,810. I also spent $40 on cleaning products they specifically requested I use. She carefully opens her folder. I kept records of every visit. Inside is a handwritten ledger documenting dates, arrival times, departure times, and every task completed in every room. Judge Judy studies the page carefully. These are extremely thorough records, she says. You clearly take your work seriously. Sophia gives a faint, grateful smile. Phone. I learned I have to document everything, Your Honor. Otherwise, people don't believe workers like me. Across the room, Victoria rolls her eyes dramatically. Madison snickers quietly without looking up from her phone. Charles leans back in his chair. Your Honor, this situation has been exaggerated by someone who doesn't really understand professional standards. Judge Judy's gaze hardens immediately. Did you hire Mrs. Joseph or not? Yes. Technically. There's no technically. Judge Judy cuts in sharply. Either you hired her or you didn't. Charles exhales impatiently. Yes, we hired her, but after the first few months, the quality of work dropped badly. She started cutting corners, missing spots, arriving late. We were paying high rates for increasingly poor service. Sophia responds quietly. I was never absent once, Your Honor. I was late only 2 times because my son became sick and needed urgent care. Both times I called Mrs. Brown ahead of time. She produces phone records highlighting the calls. Victoria interrupts immediately. Oh, please. People like that always have excuses. A stunned murmur spreads through the courtroom. Several spectators visibly recoil. Judge Judy's expression turns icy. Mrs. Brown, she says slowly. What exactly do you mean by people like that? Victoria hesitates only briefly before doubling down. I mean people who aren't professional, people who don't understand standards. We pay very well for service and expect quality. Judge Judy leans forward. That's interesting, considering, according to this lawsuit, you stopped paying entirely 3 months ago. So let's address that first. Why were you still using her services if the work was supposedly unacceptable? Charles straightens his tie calmly. In business, if the service becomes inferior, payment is withheld until improvements are made. Judge Judy's eyes narrow. Did you warn her? Document concerns? Provide written complaints? Give her opportunities to fix these alleged problems. Silence. Finally, Charles shrugs. Professional shouldn't need constant instruction. Judge Judy turns back towards Sophia. Do you have evidence of the work itself? Yes, Your Honor. Sophia hands over her phone. The bailiff connects it to the courtroom monitor. One by one, photographs fill the screen. Spotless kitchens, gleaming bathrooms, perfectly vacuumed carpets, shining windows, immaculate countertops. Every image looks professionally clean to luxury standards. The timestamps align perfectly with Sophia's records. Judge Judy studies the photos carefully. These pictures show exceptional work, she says flatly. What exactly was unsatisfactory? Victoria's composure begins slipping. It wasn't only about the cleaning. It was the presentation. Sometimes she came dressed poorly. Sometimes she looked exhausted. It wasn't professional. Judge Judy's voice lowers dangerously. She looked exhausted because she was exhausted, Mrs. Brown. She works 3 jobs. Your house was one stop in a 16-hour workday. Then Madison finally looks up from her phone. And the next words out of her mouth changed the entire courtroom. It was honestly embarrassing when friends came over, she says casually. Like, we have a certain image, a certain vibe. People would ask why someone like her was cleaning our house. It didn't fit our brand. She looked like she shopped at Goodwill. The courtroom erupts. Gasps echo from every direction. One elderly woman in the gallery blurts out, That's disgusting. The bailiff immediately calls for order. Sophia's eyes well with tears, but she fights them back. I always tried to stay out of the way, she whispers. I just wanted to work and get paid. Then Judge Judy slowly rises from her chair. The entire room falls silent. Miss Brown, she says, did you just tell this court you were ashamed of this woman because she looked poor? Madison shifts uncomfortably. I just meant she didn't fit the aesthetic. Victoria jumps in. Your Honor, appearances matter in our social circles. Charles nods confidently. Frankly, Farn, people like Mrs. Joseph should appreciate opportunities from families like ours. We could easily afford professional agencies. We gave her a chance. Judge Judy slams her hand against the bench. Faye. The sound cracks through the courtroom. People like her? She snaps. She points towards Sophia. Let me tell you something about people like Mrs. Joseph. 4. She wakes up before sunrise every day and works until night to feed her children. She kept records more organized than most businesses I've seen in this courtroom because she knew people exactly like you would try to cheat her. Faye. The Browns sit frozen. She is more honorable, more disciplined, and more professional than this entire family sitting in front of me. Victoria opens her mouth to interrupt. Judge Judy cuts her off instantly. No. Far. You're going to listen. She gestures towards Sophia again. This woman cleaned your bathrooms, scrubbed your floors, and cared for your home while sacrificing sleep, comfort, and time with her own children. Full. And your complaint is that she wore old clothes. Judge Judy turns toward Madison. And you, she says sharply. You built a career posting curated photographs online while mocking a hardworking mother for shopping at thrift stores. 4. You should be ashamed of yourself. Then she lifts Sophia's ledger for the courtroom to see. These records are meticulous. Every date, every hour, every cleaning session documented. And there are 26 text messages from you, Faye Mrs. Brown, confirming appointments. She flips through the pages. You kept requesting her services while knowingly refusing payment. Judge Judy's voice becomes thunderously direct. That is not dissatisfaction with service. Full, that is exploitation. Charles tries one final defense. We intended to pay eventually once her performance improved consistently. Judge Judy stares at him in disbelief. Far, you don't force someone to work for free while deciding whether they've earned compensation. That's not employment. That's abuse. She glances at the financial disclosures. You make millions managing investments, Mr. Brown. Your wife owns millions more in real estate. Yet you refuse to pay a struggling mother less than $200 per visit. She pauses. You spent more money dining out last month than you owed this woman for months of labor. Then Judge Judy delivers her ruling. Mrs. Joseph, judgment in your favor for $4,850 in unpaid wages. Sophia exhales shakily. But I'm not finished. Judge Judy fixes the Browns with a cold stare. Faye, I'm awarding an additional $4,850 in punitive damages because this family deliberately exploited your financial vulnerability. 26 appointments while knowingly withholding payment demonstrates intentional fraud. 4. The Browns look stunned. And another $2,500 for emotional distress after forcing this woman to sit in court and endure humiliating comments about her appearance and economic status. She reviews the numbers. With court costs, Faye, total judgment is $13,050. Victoria's face turns red instantly. That's absurd. Judge Judy doesn't flinch. No, Mrs. Brown. What's absurd is humiliating a hard-working mother while stealing her labor. Charles abruptly stands. Fool, will appeal. Judge Judy nods calmly. You're free to try. Then she adds coldly, and I sincerely hope everyone you know watches this episode. Madison suddenly looks panicked. Wait, this is actually airing on TV? Judge Judy smiles faintly. Oh yes, Miss Brown, and I hope every one of your followers sees exactly what kind of person you are. Then her expression softens as she turns back to Sophia. Mrs. Joseph, she says gently. Foo, hold your head high. Sophia wipes her eyes silently. You worked honestly. You protected yourself with professionalism, and you stood up for yourself despite being intimidated. That takes strength. 4A. The courtroom remains completely silent. Never let anyone make you feel lesser, because you earn your living through hard work. 4. The person cleaning floors with dignity has infinitely more character than the millionaire mocking them for it. Judge Judy gathers her papers. That's what justice is supposed to look like. Not simply money awarded in court. 4. But dignity restored. If this story reminded you that character matters more than wealth, subscribe now. Because no designer label, no mansion, and no amount of money can replace basic human decency. In Judge Judy's courtroom, respect matters, integrity matters, and no bank account on earth can excuse cruelty.